Morning arrived. Sunlight poured through the curtains of Sophia's apartment. Except it wasn't Sophia who opened her eyes. It was Ariana, wearing Sophia's face. She sat up slowly. For a brief second, she smiled. It worked. She walked toward the bathroom mirror. The reflection smiling back at her was Sophia, perfectly. She touched her cheeks, ran her fingers through Sophia's hair, laughed softly. I finally became you. Her phone vibrated. The screen lit up. Ethan. Her heart raced. She answered. Good morning. Ethan smiled through the phone. Good morning, beautiful. No one had ever called Ariana beautiful that way. Tears filled her eyes. I missed you. I missed you too. He laughed. I'll pick you up in an hour. Ariana whispered. I'll be ready. The call ended. She looked into the mirror again. No mistakes. You have to be Sophia. She practiced Sophia's smile, Sophia's laugh, Sophia's gentle voice, everything. Then she whispered, I can do this. Meanwhile, miles away, the real Sophia sat curled against the cold basement wall. She had cried herself to sleep. Now her throat burned from screaming. She stood once more, pounded desperately on the steel door. Please, somebody, help me. Only silence answered. Ethan smiled as Sophia entered the car. You look different today. Ariana froze. What do you mean? I don't know. You just, he smiled, look happier. Ariana forced herself to laugh. I guess I slept well. They drove to their favorite cafe. Every question Ethan asked, Ariana answered carefully. She had memorized Sophia's habits, favorite food, favorite songs, favorite perfume, everything. The date went perfectly until the waiter approached. The usual Miss Sophia. Ariana hesitated. For 2 seconds, only 2. Ethan noticed. You forgot? She laughed awkwardly. I've been distracted lately. Ethan smiled. It happens. But a tiny seed of doubt quietly entered his heart. Back at the basement, Sophia searched every inch of the room. Nothing. No phone, no windows large enough to escape. Then she noticed something. One brick near the floor was loose. That evening, Ariana removed the enchanted powder. Her own face returned. She smiled, then suddenly frowned. She stared at an old family photograph. A woman stood beside a little girl. She recognized the little girl, herself. But the woman, who is she? Her breathing quickened. She turned the picture over. Written behind it were the words, Me and Mom, 2007. Ariana's eyes widened. My mother. She couldn't remember her own mother's face. The curse had claimed another memory. She rushed to the wardrobe, opened the black envelope. The warning remained unchanged. Every borrowed face steals a memory. Her hands trembled. No, this can't keep happening. Then her phone rang. It was Ethan. Immediately, she forgot the fear. That night, Ariana dreamt. She stood inside a forest. Everything was covered in silver mist. Ahead, an old lantern glowed. Beside it stood the merchant. You ignored my warning. Ariana looked frightened. It isn't a dream, is it? No. This is where lost memories come. Around them, hundreds of glowing lights floated through the air. What are those? Yours. She reached toward one. The merchant stopped her. You can see them, but you can never touch them again. Tears rolled down her face. Please, help me. I already did. I told you to stop. She shook her head. I can't. I love him. The merchant sighed. No, you love the life you never had. When Ariana woke, her pillow was wet with tears. The following afternoon, Ethan invited Sophia to meet his parents. Ariana smiled confidently. I'd love to. Everything went well until Ethan's mother laughed. Sophia, tell Ethan what happened when you first met me. Silence. Ariana's smile faded. She had never heard that story. Ethan looked surprised. You tell it every Christmas. Ariana quickly replied, I forgot. His mother smiled kindly. You're probably nervous. The conversation continued, but Ethan couldn't stop thinking. Sophia never forgot family memories. That evening, as they drove home, he glanced sideways at her. For the first time, a strange question crossed his mind. Why does she feel like someone else? Sophia's fingers trembled as she pulled the loose brick completely free. Dust filled the air. She coughed. Behind the brick was darkness. She leaned closer. A narrow passage stretched beyond the wall. It looked old, very old, almost as though it had been forgotten for decades. Hope flooded her heart. This has to lead somewhere. She reached inside. The opening was too small. She pulled another brick, then another. The hole slowly widened. Her hands bled. Her fingernails cracked. She didn't care. Freedom was on the other side. Suddenly, she heard footsteps. Ariana. Sophia quickly pushed back the loose bricks. The heavy door opened. Ariana entered carrying food. Their eyes met. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Finally, Sophia whispered, Why are you doing this? Ariana lowered her eyes. I'm almost there. There? Soon, he will love me. Sophia shook her head. No, he loves someone else. You. Ariana smiled sadly. No, he loves your face. Without another word, she left. The steel door slammed shut once again. Sophia looked toward the hidden passage. This is my only chance. The next morning, Ariana stood in front of the bathroom mirror. She frowned. Why had she entered the bathroom? She couldn't remember. She looked at the toothbrush in her hand. For almost a full minute, she couldn't remember whether it belonged to her or Sophia. Her breathing became uneven. She rushed to her diary. Inside were pages written in her own handwriting. My name is Ariana. She smiled with relief, then frowned again. Why did I write that? She couldn't remember writing it. She quickly grabbed a marker. On the mirror, she wrote in large letters, You are Ariana. She stared at the words. Minutes later, she looked again. For a terrifying second, the sentence felt unfamiliar. Meanwhile, Ethan looked through old photographs on his phone. Something bothered him. Sophia used to laugh differently, smile differently. Even the way she held his hand had changed. He whispered, Am I imagining things? That evening, Ethan replayed dozens of videos, birthday parties, road trips, Christmas dinners. Then, a recent video. He listened carefully. Sophia's voice was slightly lower, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for him. He frowned. Stress can't change someone this much. He picked up his phone, called Deborah, one of Sophia's oldest friends. Can we meet tomorrow? Deborah smiled. Of course. What happened? I think something is wrong with Sophia. Across town, Ariana stared at an old graduation certificate. She couldn't remember graduating. The smiling woman in the photograph looked familiar, but not familiar enough. Her heart began racing. She whispered, Who am I? Sophia crawled deeper into the narrow passage. cobwebs brushed against her face. The air smelled damp. She switched on a tiny flashlight she had found in the basement. The beam revealed old wooden supports, broken pipes. Then she heard breathing. She froze. Someone else was inside the tunnel. "Who's there?" Silence. Then a weak voice answered, "Help me." Sophia's heart pounded. She followed the sound. Hidden beneath collapsed timber was an elderly woman. Thin, weak, barely conscious. Sophia rushed toward her. "Oh my goodness, who are you?" The old woman slowly opened her eyes. They never came back. Sophia looked horrified. "Who?" The old woman grabbed Sophia's wrist. "The merchant. He warned me too late." Sophia's blood ran cold. The old woman struggled to breathe. Sophia supported her gently. "My name was Eleanor." "Was?" The old woman smiled sadly. "I don't remember the rest." Tears filled her faded eyes. "I stole another woman's face. I thought it would make someone love me." Sophia listened in horror. "The memories, they disappear. Then your soul disappears too." She looked directly into Sophia's eyes. "Your friend, she doesn't have much time." Sophia gasped. "How do I stop it?" The old woman slowly reached into her pocket. She removed a tiny silver key. "The merchant, he keeps what people lose." She placed the key into Sophia's trembling hand. "Find him before Ariana forgets herself forever." The old woman's hand slowly slipped away. She closed her eyes and never spoke again. Sophia stared at the small silver key. It wasn't just a key, it was hope. Ariana stood before the bathroom mirror. Her reflection smiled back. She smiled too. Then she frowned. Something felt wrong, very wrong. She looked at the words written across the mirror. "You are Ariana." She stared for several seconds. Who wrote this? She picked up a cloth. Without thinking, she wiped the words away. Every single one. Then she smiled. Much better. Her phone rang. It was Ethan. "Good morning, Sophia." Ariana answered naturally. "Good morning." Not once did she realize he had called her by another woman's name. Miles away, Sophia stared at the small silver key in disbelief. Could one tiny key really save Ariana? She carefully hid it inside her shoe. Then she looked toward the tunnel. "I have to escape." She crawled deeper into the darkness. Behind her, the basement remained silent. Ahead, a faint breeze brushed her face. Fresh air. The tunnel had an exit. That afternoon, Deborah met Ethan at a quiet cafe. "You sounded worried." Ethan leaned forward. "I think Sophia has changed." Deborah smiled. "People change." "No, this is different." He explained everything. The forgotten memories, the strange voice, the different behavior. Deborah listened carefully, then asked one question. "When did it begin?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Right after that weekend trip." Deborah's smile disappeared. "Then that's where we start." That evening, Ariana visited her parents, or rather, Sophia's face visited them, her own parents. The moment she stepped inside, an elderly woman hugged her warmly. "My daughter." Ariana smiled politely, but inside, panic spread. She had no idea who this woman was. The woman laughed. "You've always been staring at me all day. Is something wrong?" Ariana forced a smile. No, I'm just tired. The woman gently touched her face. You've always looked exactly like your father. Ariana froze. My father? The woman laughed. Of course. Ariana looked around the room. Family photographs covered every wall. Yet, she couldn't recognize a single face, not one. Her own childhood had completely disappeared. Meanwhile, Sophia struggled desperately with the locked gate. She inserted the silver key. It wouldn't fit. There has to be another lock. She searched the walls. Then she found an old wooden door hidden beneath thick vines. The keyhole matched perfectly. The old wooden door creaked open. Bright sunlight flooded Sophia's eyes. She shielded her face. Fresh air, bird song, freedom. She fell to her knees, crying, laughing, thanking God. She was finally outside. Then she looked around. Nothing, only endless forest. No houses, no roads, no people. She had escaped the basement only to become lost in the wilderness. She took a deep breath. There has to be a way out. She began walking. Hours passed. Her feet blistered. Her clothes tore against the branches. Just as she was losing hope, she heard an engine, a pickup truck. Sophia ran toward the road. Wait! The driver slammed on his brakes. He stared in shock. Madam, what happened to you? Sophia burst into tears. Please, take me to the police. Sophia stood frozen. The television inside a small restaurant displayed local news, a charity gala. Ethan smiled proudly beside her, or rather, Ariana wearing her face. The reporter spoke. Businessman Ethan Carter attended tonight's fundraiser with his girlfriend Sophia Williams. Sophia whispered, No. The driver looked confused. Madam, that's me. He laughed awkwardly. But you're standing beside me. Sophia stared at the screen. Her own life was continuing without her. At that same moment, Ariana stood beside Ethan, smiling for photographers. Flash, flash, flash. Suddenly, a reporter asked, Miss Sophia, what was your first school? Silence. Ariana blinked. She couldn't remember. Not Sophia's, not Ariana's, nothing. Ethan quickly answered for her. She's nervous. Everyone laughed. But Ethan wasn't laughing. His suspicion had become fear. The police officer sighed. So, you are telling me someone stole your face? Sophia nodded desperately. Yes. The officer exchanged glances with his partner. Do you have any identification? No. Phone? No. Anyone who can confirm your identity? Sophia hesitated, then whispered, Ethan. The officer typed his name into the system. Moments later, he found photographs. There, he turned the monitor. Ethan stood smiling beside Sophia, or rather, Ariana. The officer folded his arms. Your story doesn't make sense. Sophia looked at the screen. Tears streamed down her face. That's not me. No, that's the woman who stole my life. The officers quietly requested a hospital evaluation. They believed she was suffering from severe delusions. Sophia realized she was completely alone. The officers turned. An elderly man wearing a long black coat slowly walked into the station. His silver walking stick tapped gently against the tiled floor. Tap, tap, tap. He smiled calmly. I know her. The officer frowned. You know this woman? I've known her longer than she realizes. Sophia's eyes widened. The merchant. The old man nodded. You escaped. Sophia rushed toward him. Please, you have to help me. They think I'm crazy. The merchant looked at the officers. I'll take responsibility for her. The officers exchanged confused glances. One shrugged. If she's your relative? The merchant smiled.
in a manner of speaking. Minutes later, they left the station together. Sophia could barely contain herself. "You have to stop Ariana. She's destroying my life." The merchant remained silent. Finally, he spoke. "The curse has entered its final stage." Sophia froze. What does that mean? It no longer matters whether Ariana removes the powder. The magic has rooted itself inside her soul. Sophia's face turned pale. So, can she still be saved? The merchant stopped. He looked directly into her eyes. "Only if she willingly gives your life back." Sophia whispered. "And if she refuses?" The merchant sighed. "Ariana will disappear forever. Not physically, but completely. No memories, no identity, no Ariana. Only a stranger wearing your face." Sophia felt tears gathering. "I don't want her to die." The merchant smiled sadly. "I know. That's why you are different." Meanwhile, Ariana stood in Sophia's apartment. She stared into the bathroom mirror. Something felt wrong. She picked up Sophia's toothbrush. She frowned. "Why am I here?" Her phone rang. "Ethan," she answered. "Hello?" "Good morning, Sophia." She smiled automatically. But then a strange question escaped her lips. "Who is Sophia?" Silence. On the other end, Ethan laughed nervously. "Very funny." Ariana looked around the apartment. Photographs, clothes, books, nothing felt familiar. She opened her handbag. Inside, she found a driver's license. She stared at the photograph. Name, Sophia Williams. She smiled softly. "So, that's my name." At that exact moment, a photograph slipped from another pocket. It showed Ariana hugging Sophia under a mango tree. On the back, someone had written, "Best friends forever." Ariana stared at the girl beside Sophia. She whispered, "Who are you?" She had forgotten herself completely. Elsewhere, Ethan sat alone inside his office. He replayed dozens of voice messages from Sophia, then listened to today's phone call. His hands began to shake. He whispered, "That's not her." For the first time, he believed the impossible. Rain poured heavily across the city. Lightning flashed. Thunder shook the windows. Ethan burst through Sophia's apartment door. "Ariana!" The woman standing in the living room slowly turned. She frowned. "Who's Ariana?" Ethan's heart stopped. He looked into Sophia's eyes. But nothing was there. No recognition, no warmth, no memories, only confusion. "You don't know me?" She slowly shook her head. "My name," she looked at the driver's license again, "is Sophia." At that moment, the front door opened again. The merchant entered. Behind him walked the real Sophia. The room fell completely silent. Two identical women. Same face, same voice, same eyes. Ethan looked from one to the other. His breathing became uneven. "This is impossible," the real Sophia whispered. "Ethan." He looked toward her. She smiled through tears. "Do you remember our first lunch together? You spilled orange juice on your shirt. You pretended to be embarrassed just to make me laugh." Ethan remembered. The other Sophia could only stare in confusion. The merchant stepped forward. "The final hour has arrived." He placed the enchanted compact on the table. "The curse can still be broken, but only through one choice." He looked at Ariana. "You must willingly surrender the face you stole and accept every painful memory you've been trying to escape. If you refuse," he closed the compact, "Ariana will cease to exist forever." Silence filled the apartment. Rain battered the windows. Lightning flashed once more. Ariana looked at the real Sophia, then at Ethan. She didn't recognize either of them. But somewhere, deep inside her heart, a tiny voice whispered, "She is your friend." One tear slowly rolled down her cheek. The merchant opened the compact one last time. Choose. Ariana looked at Ethan, then at Sophia. Tears streamed down her face. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of living someone else's life. She picked up the enchanted brush, dipped it into the glowing powder, and gently brushed it across Sophia's face. A blinding silver light filled the apartment. The magic screamed, the walls trembled. Every stolen memory flew from Ariana like thousands of glowing butterflies, returning to their rightful owner. When the light faded, Sophia stood as herself once again. Ariana had become Ariana. She collapsed to her knees, remembering everything: her childhood, her mother, her friendship with Sophia, and every terrible thing she had done. I'm sorry, Sophia cried as she embraced her. You broke me, but I won't let hate break me too. Ethan silently held Sophia's hand. The merchant picked up the compact. No one should ever have the power to steal another person's identity. With a single touch, the compact turned into silver dust and disappeared forever. Months later, Ariana left the city to begin a new life, determined to become someone worth loving as herself, not as someone else. Sophia and Ethan married the following spring, with one empty seat in the front row reserved for the friend they hoped time would one day bring back. As the church bells rang, Sophia smiled through tears. Some friendships don't survive betrayal.